Today I want to revise a show I did several months ago, Indiana Jones and the Strong Female Lead. Only this time, no AI voice, my own voice, with newer information. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is the final chapter in the Indiana Jones story. Star Harrison Ford is now in his 80s. Some people blame Phoebe Waller-Bridge for the film's failure. But is this fair?
So what are you doing here in Nepal?
I need one of the pieces your father collected.
I learned to hate you in the last 10 years.
Raiders of the Lost Ark took the country by storm back in 1981. It was a sort of revival of the old chapter plays of the 30s and the 40s, better known as serials. Harrison Ford was the biggest star of this era, with the Indiana Jones and Star Wars films under his belt. The film also introduced us to his main love interest, the only one he would return to over the course of 5 films, Marian Ravenwood, played by Karen Allen. Marian was no damsel in distress. She was a savvy businesswoman that was the proprietor of her own bar, who was tough as nails, as we can see in the opening scene where she is drinking a bar patron under the table. However, she's also not a Mary Sue type of character. She has her strengths and her weaknesses. Steven Spielberg intended the role for his girlfriend at the time, Amy Irving. Sean Young and Stephanie Zimbalist also auditioned for the role. Barbara Hershey was also considered, while Deborah Winger actually turned the role down. Spielberg cast Karen Allen based on her performance in National Lampoon's Animal House. Allen screen tested opposite Tim Matheson and John Shea before Harrison Ford was cast as Indiana. Karen Allen came up with her own backstory for the character, such as what happened to her mother, her romance with Indiana at age 15 or 16, and her time in Nepal. Spielberg described it as an entirely different movie. Marian's father, Dr. Abner Ravenwood, was a biblical archaeologist, obsessed with finding the biblical Ark of the Covenant. He was also a mentor to the young Indiana Jones, who eventually accompanied them on several digs. The characters of Indy and Marian obviously loved each other, but their personalities clashed. It was a great love-hate relationship that saw them reunite first in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, then in Dial of Destiny. In my view, she was the best of Indy's love interests, and the longest lasting. The next, and possibly the weakest love interest, was Temple of Doom's Willie Scott, played by Kate Capeshaw. This character was a damsel in distress who didn't know how to handle herself.
The biggest trouble with her is the noise.
She shows up in Temple of Doom, which actually takes place before Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, in her defense, she was a lounge singer and not brought up to be tough as nails. In 1935, American archaeologist Indiana Jones survives a murder attempt from Lao Che, who hired him to retrieve the remains of Narhasa. Jones flees from the city in the company of the young orphan Short Round and nightclub singer Willie Scott. Willie was born in Missouri to a wealthy family and moved to Shanghai when she was unable to break into Hollywood during the Great Depression. Willie has led this pampered life, and that's what's due to her being cared for and looked after. She meets Indiana Jones, a person unlike anyone she's ever been involved with, and ends up going off with him. In the course of all their adventures, all of her earlier life is stripped away from her. Willie must fall back on her own resources. She discovers she is a very gutsy woman, a strong lady. Willie is a much different character than the one Karen Allen played in Raiders. Willie was named after Spielberg's dog. He wanted Willie to be a complete contrast to Marian, so Capeshaw dyed her brown hair blonde for the role. Spielberg would marry Capeshaw in 1991.
I can't forget how wonderful it was.
Thank you. It was rather wonderful.
Dr. Elsa Schneider was played by Alison Doody. What makes her character compelling is we are never sure which side she's on. Is she a devout Nazi or a counter-spy? In the end, I suppose she's on her own side, using whoever she wants to get ahead. She is the secondary antagonist in The Last Crusade, and an Austrian archaeologist who desires the Grail, and Mike Donovan, who keeps her involvement with the Nazis secret. She is revealed to have seduced both of the Jones boys, Henry first, then Indiana. And it's implied that she's more fond of the latter. Later, she deliberately picks a false grail for Donovan as revenge after he shoots Henry. She enjoyed watching him decay into a skeleton before her eyes. Afterwards, she crossed the temple seal with the grail, causing the temple to collapse and dropping the grail as well as nearly falling into the chasm. Indy catches her, but she sees the grail on a rock and greedily reaches for it, despite Indy's warnings. The hand that Indy's holding slips out of the leather glove, causing her to fall to her death. According to Doty, Elsa's role as a femme fatale was an attempt to distance the character from Willie Scott. In an early script of the film, Elsa was going to be the one to shoot Henry in the Holy Grail Temple, and she was set to die after drinking from the false grail, a fate that would later go to Walter Donovan. But the script was changed. IGN placed Elsa 33rd on their list of the best bad girls on film in 2008. Marian Ravenwood returns in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Here, she marries Indy, and it's revealed they have a son, Mutt, played by Shia LaBeouf. We later learn that Mutt was killed and does not return for the Dial of Destiny. Kate Blanchett is cast as a female foil for Indy. Colonel Arian Spalko is a Soviet agent born in the eastern regions of the Ukraine, Soviet Socialist Republic. She was believed by those in her village to be a witch, as her psychic powers began to manifest themselves through animal control. She is skilled in fencing and hand-to-hand combat, and is Indy's main antagonist as she brings the Crystal Skull to Akator to utilize the power there as part of the Soviet Union's experiments in mind control. Her desire for knowledge proves to be her undoing when the Crystal Skull entity grants her desire to know everything, overloading her mind and causing her to disintegrate as her scattered essence is transported to another dimension. Frank Marshall said that he continued the tradition of Indy having a love-hate relationship with every woman he comes in contact with. Blanchett had been wanting to play a villain for a couple of years before being cast. Her character was modeled after Marlene Dietrich, while her bob cut was George Lucas' idea and was inspired by Louise Brooks. In an early draft of the film, Sparko was set to fight with Williams in a real virgin jungle, but the idea was scrapped because of the risks. Uma Thurman was considered for the role of Sparko, but she declined it. Now, the final film in the Indiana Jones franchise sees Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena Shaw, Jones' goddaughter. James Mangold identifies Helena as the catalyst of the film, kicking off the film's plot after dragging her godfather into her problem. The filmmakers describing the character as slippery, charming, the girl next door, a grifter, a pioneer in ethical accounting, and similar to comedic characters with machine gun dialogue akin to those of Ben Hecht's plays. She is the daughter of Basil, an old friend of Jones. This is the most painful female lead in the franchise. The character is clearly a Mary Sue that can do no wrong. In one scene, she is in a classroom and knows the answer to everything discussed. No one else in the classroom has a clue. It's clear that the studio was setting her up to be a replacement for the aging Indy. In the other films in the franchise, the female leads are Indy's equals. Well, except for the hapless Willie. But here, Indy is not as strong as Helena. She is smarter and a better archaeologist. It's also because of Helena that Indy is wanted for murder. I always wanted 5 Indiana Jones movies, and was excited to hear that this one was being made, but then I heard that Kathleen Kennedy was in charge, and I became disappointed. In Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, there's a scene where Mutt is reaching for the fedora. Are they going to pass the franchise baton to Indy's son? No! Indy grabs the fedora and puts it on while the Indiana Jones theme is played, telling us that Indy is back on top. It's a feel-good moment that makes you enjoy how this movie comes together. Now, what do we get in The Dial of Destiny? Indiana Jones is mortally wounded with a gunshot to the belly. He and his cohorts find themselves trapped in a past where no one knows what a gun is, let alone how to treat a gunshot wound, yet he wants to stay in that time and not return to the present, where his wound could be treated. Instead of coming back on top, he seems to want to die. Helena has to punch him and knock him out in order to return him to the present day. After that, we finally see Marian, and these actors try to make this a feel-good scene, Harrison Ford and Karen Allen. But after the depressing way we see Indiana Jones not wanting to return to the present day, the scene falls flat, and we Indiana Jones fans are not pleased with the outcome. At least this Indiana Jones fan isn't. It's a sad note to end a once great franchise. Now, what did you think? Do you agree with my view? Who was your favorite female lead in the Indiana Jones franchise? Let me know your comments in the comments section. I'd be honored if you subscribe to my channel and ring the bell to stay informed of upcoming shows. And check out my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise, also in the comments. Until next time, this is Kevin Given saying, live long and prosper, may the Force be with you, and keep reaching for the stars.